Hey, my name's Frank, and I'm here to introduce you to a little skill I like to call the sniff. Sure, humans like Henry think it's just sticking my nose in a bush or up against the tires of his Subaru, but I promise you, it's way more complex than that. My nose is basically a high-tech sensory tool, and I use it for some real undercover work. Now, some say dogs see with their noses. I wouldn't go that far, but let's just say we pick up on details you guys don't even know are there. Your world? Kind of like a two-dimensional painting compared to our 3D olfactory masterpiece. I mean, humans are all proud of their vision, right? But in my world, the real info isn't in what you see, it's in what you sniff. And boy, do I sniff. First off, let's clear something up. If you see me out there, nose to the ground, I'm not just looking for leftovers. I'm basically conducting a full-on investigation. A single sniff can tell me who's been around, what kind of mood they're in, what they ate for breakfast, and even if they're planning to make a return trip to the area. Imagine if humans could do that. Talk about a game changer at parties. But do humans have this super skill? Nope. I mean, I watch Henry struggle to figure out if his milk's gone bad without sticking his face right in the carton. Meanwhile, I can detect a whiff of bacon from 3 blocks away. And before you think that's just my bulldog hunger talking, let's remember I can also smell stuff like rain before it starts. And Henry? Well, he's usually scrambling to grab an umbrella when it's already pouring. So, here's the science of it. For those of you curious types, my nose has something like 300 million smell receptors. That's right, 300 million. How many does Henry have? 5 to 6 million. Sad, right? And these aren't just sitting around collecting dust. No, they're hard at work, decoding every single scent molecule that comes my way. And each one tells me a story. You might be asking, what can you really tell with all this sniffing? Well, let's start with the basics. Scents, to me, are like footprints in time. Every scent I catch has a history and an intent behind it. The other day, we're walking down Fifth Avenue, and I catch a whiff of another dog who'd been by. From that one sniff, I knew he was a terrier mix with a nervous habit. Probably new to the neighborhood, poor guy, and that he'd been munching on some street food from the vendor by Henry's office. I could even tell he was itching from allergies. Pollen's a real pest this season. But here's where it gets cool. I can even get a whiff of future intentions. Yes, you heard me right. Say I'm sniffing a spot and I catch an intense scent. That's my word for it. It's like a trace of a scent that tells me this other dog plans on coming back to the same spot. Kind of like their way of marking a mental map. I sniff it, and I know, alright, someone's going to be back here soon. Maybe it's time I leave a message of my own. It's like a form of social media for dogs. Sniff book, if you will. Henry? He thinks I'm wasting time, tugging on the leash, rolling his eyes like, come on Frank, move along. But I'm just getting the news, buddy. Imagine if he could check his social media in one inhale. Wouldn't he be scrolling all day? Living with Henry means I get to run my nose on high alert from morning to night. Honestly, the apartment is a sensory paradise. Or disaster, depending on your perspective. Take breakfast, for example. I smell Henry's cereal and milk as soon as he pours it. And it hits me. The milk is slightly sour, but do you think he notices? Not a chance. He's there with his nose practically in the bowl, happily chomping away. Sometimes, I think he wouldn't survive a day without me sniffing out the hazards. Then there's the mystery of the missing sock. This is a classic Henry situation. He's running late, tearing the place apart for his lucky work sock. Now, most people would have given up, but not me. One sniff of his closet, a quick whiff near the couch, and boom, I've found it behind the laundry basket. What can I say? For me, every item in this apartment has a scent signature, kind of like a barcode. Each one tells a story, and each story leaves a trace that I can follow like a breadcrumb trail. It's pretty impressive, if I say so myself. If only he'd let me do his taxes. Now, I know what you're thinking. Frank, surely you have better things to sniff than an old sock? Well, sure. But the truth is, sniffing is my way of making sense of the world. Where Henry sees the chaos of his belongings tossed everywhere, I see order. There's an old smell here, a new smell there, a trace of last night's dinner, and a hint of his aftershave mixed in. To me, it's a comforting, rich tapestry of his life. And every sniff makes me feel more at home. Alright, so the apartment's cool and all, but nothing beats the great outdoors. Walking with Henry through Brooklyn is a daily adventure. I know every tree, every lamppost, every goatsan, soldashas, the gofgam, zdasam, my post, every corner we pass. And trust me, they all have stories to tell. The trees along the sidewalks, each one is a message board. Other dogs leave their posts, and I catch up on the local gossip. Did you hear the golden retriever on 7th Avenue is moving? Somebody new in town. A beagle with a big attitude problem. This might sound like small talk, but to me, it's like reading the morning newspaper. I'm just keeping myself informed. Knowledge is power, after all. Plus, there's always a surprise around every corner. One time Henry and I were out, and I caught this smell. Strong and strange. At first, I thought it was one of those spicy street foods, but as we got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. It was a skunk. A live one, right there in Brooklyn. Now, Henry couldn't smell it. Not until it was practically on top of us. But by that time, I'd already yanked us in the opposite direction. He thought I was being a pain, of course, but I saved us both from a reeking disaster. You're welcome, Henry. And don't even get me started on the pigeons. They leave little scent trails too, but they're too quick for me to catch. They flap and squawk like they own the place. But I know the truth. They're basically just squirrels with wings. Henry's a good guy. He works hard, comes home every evening, and tries his best to understand me, even if he doesn't always get it. But here's the thing. His scent tells me so much more about him than he probably realizes. His work shirt, a mix of office smells, paper, ink, a faint smell of coffee, and that little hint of stress sweat he gets around 3 in the afternoon. The guy works in insurance, after all. His job sounds boring to me, but to each their own. Sometimes he goes out after work, comes back with a different scent, maybe a trace of a bar or a hint of perfume. Yeah, I can smell that too. No, I don't get jealous. I just file it under interesting data. He doesn't tell me much about his love life, but I know he's on the lookout. He does that thing where he freshens up just a little before he heads out on Fridays. Maybe it's a date, maybe it's not. Either way, I just hope she's a dog person. One time, he came back smelling of a particular brand of perfume that was very floral, mixed with the scent of a cat. A cat. I couldn't believe it. I sniffed him for a full 5 minutes, dissecting every note, until he laughed and told me, "Relax, Frank. I'm not switching teams." Phew, that was a close one. Now, don't get me wrong. Smell is my superpower, but it's also my way of staying connected to Henry. When he's gone, I like to bury my nose in his favorite hoodie or sleep on his pillow. The scent reminds me of him, and I feel calm, like he's right there with me. And when he comes home, I'm waiting at the door, ready to take in all the new scents he's brought back. It's our little ritual. To Henry, my sniffing is just something dogs do, but to me, it's a way of understanding, of experiencing life. It's how I keep us safe, how I entertain myself, and how I show him I care. So the next time he laughs at me for sniffing something random, I just give him that knowing look, the one that says, "Oh, Henry, if only you knew what you're missing." Henry says I've got a nose for trouble. Well, he's not entirely wrong. My talent for sniffing out hidden treats is pretty much legendary. Take Halloween, for example. Henry thought he could stash all the candy in the highest cabinet in the kitchen. But the second he left for work, I was on the case. One whiff, and I had that whole cabinet mapped out in my mind. I knew the location, type, and brand of each candy bar. Of course, Henry didn't let me have any. Something about chocolate being dangerous for dogs. But that doesn't stop me from sniffing them out every single year, hoping he'll finally cave. Then there's the kitchen trash. For Henry, it's just a smelly bin of leftovers he doesn't think twice about. But to me, it's a treasure trove of scents, each one more fascinating than the last. I mean, that stale pizza crust? Delicious. The half-eaten burger? A masterpiece. Once I managed to get the lid open, and let's just say I was in dog heaven. Of course, Henry wasn't thrilled when he came home. But hey, if he'd had my nose, he'd understand. What Henry doesn't realize is that my nose is built for this kind of work. The moment he opens the fridge, I'm there, analyzing every scent. Each leftover has a unique smell that tells me all I need to know about what he's been up to. It's like I'm a detective, piecing together the case of what Henry had for dinner. Alright, so why do we dogs sniff everything, from hydrants to humans? It's not just because we can, it's because that's how we process the world. Think of your nose as a tiny portal into a fraction of reality, while mine is a direct gateway to all the dimensions of smell around me. It's how I form memories, understand relationships, and even identify myself. You see, dogs have something humans lack, a little feature called the Jacobson's organ, or the vomeronasal organ, if you want to get fancy about it. This organ helps me pick up on pheromones and other scent markers that aren't detectable by humans. It's like having a superpower that allows me to read emotions, sense intentions, and recognize other animals and humans without even meeting them face to face. Sometimes when Henry and I walk past another dog, I can tell right away if he's friendly or not, just from the pheromones he's left behind. It's kind of like a mood indicator for me. And if you've ever seen me pull my lips back while I sniff, well, that's me activating my Jacobson's organ. It might look silly, but it's pure science at work, my friends. One thing I've noticed over the years is that each season has its own unique scent. Spring smells fresh, like newly cut grass and blooming flowers. Summer has that hot, dusty scent, mixed with grilled food from neighborhood cookouts. Side note, the number of hot dogs that go unshared in this city is an absolute crime. Fall is my favorite. It smells like crunchy leaves, bonfires, and pumpkin spice everything. Yeah, even I can smell that. And winter? Well, winter smells cold. It's hard to explain, but if you know, you know. Each season brings a different cast of characters to our walks, too. In spring, we're dealing with all sorts of pollen, which, let me tell you, isn't exactly a pleasure for a dog with my kind of nose. Henry laughs at me when I sneeze, but if he had to sniff up all the pollen I do, he'd be sneezing too. Summer is all about the barbecues, which means I'm on high alert for stray burger scraps. Fall is heaven, with all the rich, earthy scents from the leaves and soil. And in winter, it's a quieter kind of smell, clean and crisp. Every season has its own rhythm, and I like to think my nose is tuned to each one. Okay, let's get real here. Not every smell is a pleasure. There are the unmentionables, the dog equivalent of horror movies. Take the vet's office, for example. The moment I walk through those doors, my nose is bombarded with the scent of disinfectant mixed with fear. It's unmistakable. Every dog who's been in there leaves a little bit of their nervous energy behind, and I can pick it up immediately. Henry doesn't get it. He thinks I'm just being dramatic when I plant my paws firmly on the ground outside the vet's door, refusing to go in. But if he could smell what I smell in there, he'd probably turn around too. It's not that I don't like the people there. They're fine. But the whole place smells like anxiety, and I'm not a fan. And then there are other, shall we say, nature smells. Sure, some dogs love the smell of skunks, garbage, and bathroom spots. But me? I'm a bit more refined. I'd much rather sniff a nice grilled chicken or Henry's cologne over a random trash can any day. As I sit here writing my story, mentally of course, Henry's the one with thumbs. I can't help but wonder what the future holds for a bulldog with a nose like mine. Maybe one day they'll finally invent a way for humans to understand what we smell. Imagine Henry's face if he could experience the world the way I do. He'd probably be overwhelmed at first. There's a lot to take in. But eventually, he'd come to appreciate the nuances of scent just like I do. Until then, I'll keep sniffing my way through life, following my nose wherever it takes me. Whether it's a walk through the park or a whiff of Henry's cooking experiments, every day brings something new. And that, my friends, is the beauty of having a nose like mine. So if you ever see me out there, nose to the ground, don't assume I'm just wasting time. I'm on a mission, gathering data, learning the stories of the world around me. To you, it might look like I'm just sniffing a tree, but to me, it's a full-blown investigation, a sensory adventure, and maybe, just maybe, the key to understanding life itself.